Welcome back to another episode of the Brew and Ink podcast.
All right, welcome back to Brew and Ink podcast. We have a new season today, Steven.
Season 5 is starting today.
Season 5, episode 1 is starting today. This is our new story, a sci-fi, kind of epic space opera, philosophical exploration that we've got going on, and we're really excited about it. It's called Singularity.
A lot of adjectives there, yes.
A lot of adjectives. Thank you. You gave me caffeine, Steven.
Well, you know.
So
our last episode was really early in the morning, so we got to be extra hype on this one.
We got to be a different kind of hype.
We are excited. Another season is starting, which means for us, another story is beginning. And I love the beginning of stories because there's so much possibility.
Yeah.
We don't even know. We know where it's going, but we don't know how we're going to get there, essentially.
Well, and the reason why we don't know, as we've said, is because you, the audience,
yes, our faithful listeners,
are a big part of where the story is going to go, and so that means the setup of this story is really important. Obviously, like this is the biggest thing we have to do is to set it up, because if we don't set it up well, then, you know, people won't understand the characters, won't understand the basic idea of the story.
Or the story will drag on.
Yeah. And so we're going to try to do a better job this season, kind of trying to keep the choices tighter. We're going to have 2 instead of 3.
Right.
And so hopefully the story won't meander as much as Boneyard did, even though Boneyard was really good. A lot of people really liked it.
I still have people telling me that they're listening through it and they finished it and they're like, "Man, it was great. I loved it." And I ask them, at what part did we jump the shark?" And they're like, "No, it was all good."
And so, but anyway, it's going to be really great. And Steven has prepared the first installment. So
I've got it. It's right here.
Kick it off for us today. But before we get into that, we're going to actually talk about something related to our first episode here.
Yes.
Of the season, which is, how do you take an idea and a concept and turn that into a great story?
Right. Because they're not necessarily synonymous. Just because you have a good concept doesn't necessarily mean you have a good story. And you can have a good story, but does it have an interesting concept?
Exactly. And so this goes into one of the things that I've noticed often, and I won't say exactly where, but sometimes on certain streaming services,
right,
the idea will be amazing.
Yes.
Like the idea and the concept of whatever the show or movie, mostly the movies, you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta watch that."
Right.
Like, that sounds really cool. But then you start watching it, and about a third of the way into it, you're like, "What is happening?" Like, we don't, it's either going off the rails, or they're just not
you're
developing,
already predicting what's happening to the end.
or it's predictable,
yeah,
or there's just things coming out of left field, or whatever. And so it's really important to know how to take a concept and turn it into a good story. So to take a concept of something that might be really simple, or it might be just really amazing,
right,
and then make a good story out of it. Because I've also seen the opposite happen, where you're watching a movie that really doesn't have that interesting of a setup or concept.
Right.
And because it's so well
engaging,
written,
yeah,
and acted, or whatever, whatever the setup is,
yeah,
but the development of the characters, even though it may not even be that original of an idea, you're still in and you care about what's going to happen. Obviously, as writers, we all want both. We want the really original creative idea and the development of a great story that brings people in, makes them care, makes them cry, makes them laugh, whatever we want them to do by the end of the story. So what are some things you think we have to do to take a great concept and turn it into a great story?
Yeah. And I think one of those things is your concept has got to tie in. It can't just be, well, why did they live on a planet that, the ground is super bouncy? Just other than the fact that it would be a cool idea, or, oh, well, maybe your main character is the shortest person ever, and it's all about him reaching new heights higher than other people. I don't know, but
pun intended, obviously.
Yes. But yeah, tying it in to the overall character arc or the story arc, somehow making it that you couldn't almost pull it out of the story without disassembling the entire story concept. And it doesn't have to be like the linchpin of everything, but like you can have the idea of a race of people with a third arm, and it's a cool idea, cool concept, but why talk about it? Why tell us about these people if that's all you're doing? If you're just wanting to talk about a race of people with three arms, it's not going to be that interesting. But if you give this deep-seated background of, like, these are how, they came out of, this war between people with three legs versus people with three arms, and the three-armed people won, and, now this is how they're ruling the universe.
They're discriminating against two-armed people.
Exactly, yes. And so now you're getting into more of a, or at least hopefully, it's more of an engaging and interesting story. But I think that's part of where you have to start. Is it can't just be, I'm telling a story about people living underwater because it sounds cool. Like, it's got to be Waterworld. It's got to have Kevin Costner. It's got to be like the whole world is living on this ocean world, and resources are limited, and give us all these reasons as to why someone that can swim underwater and breathe in water would actually be more of a desired character in this environment.
Yeah, I think really for me it comes down to
Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner, generally.
Yeah.
He does have the ability to make even a bad movie at least entertaining.
Yeah.
No, I think that it really comes down to the truth that good writing is about making people care about your characters and what happens to them, and putting them through an arc that takes your reader on a journey of even self-discovery,
right?
But definitely discovering the character. But as you take the character through a journey, then the reader goes through that journey. Like, the reader is in, and that's why even a very derivative or unoriginal concept can actually be very engaging to people, because good writing isn't really about the original idea.
Right.
Now, we like original ideas because we've seen romantic comedies a billion times, right? But so we like a little bit of an original idea. We like those, and those can help sell a book.
Yeah.
But if you don't get into the story and care about any of the characters, I can't remember the book I'm thinking of right now, but there was a book. I go to the library all the time just to check out new books, or I go online and I try to find out something that's new or interesting, or because for me, reading is in part research, right?
Yeah.
As a writer, I want to see what other people are doing, what's popular, what's going on, what's some interesting new ideas that people are having. And there was like this superhero book, and it had like this kind of interesting setup where like some people were superheroes and most people were superheroes, or something. Like, there were different tiers of superheroes, like something had happened, right? Yeah. And I was like, well, this sounds really cool. And I got about 50 pages in and didn't care about anyone. Like 40 pages of it was info dump about the history and the backstory and the world building. And I'm like, you haven't made me care about anyone.
Right.
And like, we could take Harry Potter and say, oh, a kid goes to wizard school. Well, that's a cool idea, and it might make a kid pull the book off of a shelf and check it out.
Yeah.
But the reason why kids like the book is because he was a kid who didn't have parents, and his aunt and his uncle put him down, and he was staying underneath. Like, there's all these details that made us care about him.
Right.
And as a kid, we loved the idea that there was this whole other world that really does want you. Like, you live in this life and you think it sucks.
Right.
Right? I mean, those are like middle school themes,
desires,
right?
and themes, yeah.
And so, all that.
And I to piggyback on what you're saying, I think part of that is what about your idea takes your character or your reader from everyday life or oppressed life or what they would know as just their regular day in, day out, and then transports them to, like what you said, Harry Potter, the juxtaposition of where he had been living and being downtrodden and a nobody, versus like all of a sudden now we're introduced to this magical realm where he actually is somebody. He's a famous wizard, unbeknownst to him.
Everybody knows about him. They whisper about him.
Like, and so now you're interested. You're like, oh, I want to know more about this, and I want to know more about does he get out of this life of oppression? And you find out no, he has to go back at the end of every school year, which is a great setup. Like, my point too is that in order to make your story interesting, in order to make your concept work with the story, it's got to involve conflict in a way that makes your readers go, okay, this is why we're here. This is what we're focusing on. We're going to figure something out here. Maybe it's self-discovery, through the character's eyes, or I always like to have a question in mind that I'm addressing without actually addressing it to the reader, in verbatim words. But I'm hoping as I'm writing, readers are stopping to go, what would I do in this situation? What would my response to this be if there were talking aliens light years away, that whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I always want to impart, even as a reader myself, when I'm reading someone else's story. Obviously, you don't want to be just talked down to and fed all the interesting parts, all the parts that you should be making, decisions on, or the character should be making decisions on. But at the same time, you want to be led down a path where you're going to be thinking of, okay, what is my reaction to this? This is what the character did, but do I agree with it? And then that starts putting you in those shoes of going, okay, I like this character, I don't like this character. This character doesn't do what I would do. And as long as you have that conflict set up in a way that it integrates your great idea or your great concept, then people aren't going to question it. They're not going to be like, why is everyone walking around with umbrellas for heads? Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep coming up with random things.
Well, like I said, it really comes down to character, theme, conflict.
Yeah.
This is the basis
basic building
of
blocks.
Any story. I'm not going to say genre doesn't matter, but in a certain sense, genre doesn't matter. In a certain sense, genre really is just the window dressing of the same building blocks of story that we want to care about a character, what he or she does, and their arc, and we want to see the conflict resolve, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, how many zombie movies are there? And some of them are awful. Some of them have, because the focus is just on the idea that they're zombies.
Right.
But the zombie movies we like are actually about the characters. And there's
Zombieland.
Zombieland is amazing.
Right.
And I haven't seen the new one yet, but I've heard it's really good.
I haven't either, yeah.
But all that to say is, the genre, someone might get interested because it's a zombie movie. Like, oh, I like zombie movies. Mm-hmm. But in the end, they're going to keep checking something out because they care about the characters and all of that stuff. The basic kind of building blocks of story are there. And even if they're just done well, okay, maybe it's not a world-changing book, but people will get to the end of it satisfied and think, well, that was pretty good. That was entertaining, or that was good. And I just know that that's happened to me on both sides of it, where I'm like, oh, I love science fiction. And you start checking out a movie and you're like, this sucks. Like, I don't even care, And so I just think it's really important to make sure that whatever the cool idea is, that you know how to write that part. Mm-hmm. There was a meme I saw recently where the guy says, I don't even say guy, I think it was a guy. There's a quote where he says, as a writer, I'm always like torturing myself for this really unique idea. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just like torturing myself for this unique idea. And then I go and I read the same book over and over and over again. In other words, like I'm reading the same book in different titles and different, like I'm just reading the same vampire story over and over again. Or there's another quote about, yes, the story may have been written before, but it wasn't written by you. Like, there's something individual that we put into our stories that make people care, that we can relate to, make things universal. And even though there just might be minor differences here or there, details, that's the most important part. So I love a great idea. Well, we all like that, but
I think a lot of times when I'm getting new story ideas, it's coming from a concept. Like, I'll put two things together in my mind while I'm just doing something, and then as those two concepts almost collide in my brain, I start going, oh, wait, there's an idea here. And then you start mining that idea and you go, okay, what is the story in this? What makes this interesting? to tell.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're honing in with this.
Yeah, and obviously to make something A plus, right? There needs to be somewhat of an original concept.
Yeah.
And well written, and it's consistent, the theme and the character and everything works with the concept, all of it. Like, it all works together. Those are the ones that are just way over the top. But people just love great stories. And they will sit through your movie and read through your book if you just get them to care about your character. And bring them to a satisfying conclusion, whatever that arc might be.
Oh, yes.
And so I think it's a great discussion, because I think there are a lot of writers out there that are worried about their concept. Like, is it unique enough?
Right.
And it's good to work on that and brainstorm. But just remember, you can have the best idea ever and completely ruin it with a bad story.
Yep.
So speaking of a great idea and hoping that we don't ruin it, we're going to get into season 5.
Oh, yes.
And kicking it off.
Kicking it off is episode 1, written by me. You guys, you faithful listeners, be the judge of whether or not we are practicing what we preach here. Okay.
Thank you. Good.
All right, let's get into it. We just want to say thanks for listening to our podcast. If you are interested in learning more about writing and how to become a writer, check out our syndication page, SeriousWriter.com. They have articles, resources, classes, videos, and a podcast, the Brew and Ink Podcast. Again, check out SeriousWriter.com. Thanks for listening. Singularity, Chapter 1, Disconnected. Captain Mitchell Bruce, touchdown to planet Zuthras in T-3 minutes. Prepare your landing protocols and diagnostic uplinks. The computerized female voice pierced in my headset, undoing the calming effect the last few hours of silence had done for my nerves. And I'm not talking about the I'm shaking in my boot type nerves, no. I'm talking about the you're about to be on my last type nerves. My body was stiff from sitting for so long, and that stiffness gets me in a foul mood. I groaned as I leaned over to begin flipping an array of switches to turn off the autonav. Taking over manual flight, I readjusted my ocular headset and zeroed in on the viewport displaying our approach vectors. I began dialing in my landing procedurals. I got it, Jin. Thanks for getting us here all in one piece this time. Affirmative. Let the record show that the last run was not my fault, Captain, Jin said. We were hijacked by pirates in Sector 12 right after launch. It was you who slept through the whole ordeal. You didn't believe me until I made you review the video footage. Chuckling to myself, I said, and you had it under control. I especially liked how you dropped the one out the garbage chute when he didn't realize he was standing on it. Classic. Now, remind me why we're here again? A captain should review the mission briefings before the mission begins, per protocol, Jin stated. Relax, that's what I have you for. Why try and memorize all the pointless data when I have a state-of-the-art navigation system to do it all for me? Correction. I am not only a nav, I am a sophisticated, thinking, understanding personality and intelligence drone. Yeah, I know the stupid terminology. Now what's the mission data? I leaned forward in my chair, fighting off the spasm that wanted to shoot down my side. My back couldn't take the long flight hours like it once used to. First, my legs get stiff less than an hour into the mission, then my back starts tightening up. Being 103 was still thought of as young, now that life expectancy was reported into the 200s. But that was for kids born nowadays with their efficiency-altered genomes and biohacked modware. For grown men like me, it required daily doses of multiple supplements and vitality elixirs to even break the hundreds. Even though I was considered in the prime of my professional life, I still felt too old for these shifts. Maybe I should start nano-acupuncture. Did I say that out loud? What was that, Captain? Jin's voice cut back in over the headphone. Nothing, Jin. Just complaining to myself. Can you read me off the mission briefing? A please would be nice, she responded, and then began relaying the details to why we flew 13 hours to get here. My interest in this mission had been piqued when I saw how far we'd be passing outside the realm of inhabited planet systems. The IIF had never sent us this far out before. The Intergalactic Industrial Federation is the preeminent pioneer of all terraforming and global outreach programs throughout the solar system. No one was allowed to develop or settle a new planet unless the IIF had sufficiently run their diagnostics and set up their patented security infrastructure, power, comms, and biosystems. They called it Pioneer Safety Protocol. I called it what it was, power and control. I had opposed this back in my early 20s, against the forming of an intergalactic terraforming hegemon, but the facts had weighed in favor of the process. In the early days of colonization, whole populations were lost to an epidemic. Then, the IIF got involved and produced a 99% drop in mortality rates during settlement initiatives, effectively putting an end to what was known as the pioneering pandemic of early colonization. The IIF wasn't just making it survivable for humans to safely inhabit other planets, but they were also able to keep the inhabitants secure by remotely policing any unlawful activity amongst the colonies. The IIF was quickly thrust to the forefront of all human expansions throughout the known galaxies. After I joined the Space Force and served 20 years as a grunt, I finally got my chance to become a pilot. However, the opening was at the IIF. I had to come to grips with my beliefs of my 20s. The IIF may not be perfect, but they are the best we've got. Sir, are you listening to me? Jin's voice snapped me out of my trip down memory lane. I wanted to be annoyed, but these new artificial intelligent assistants were top of the line, and even though they proved to be useful in most cases, they also simulated emotions such as hurt and offense. So, when I would have naturally spouted off some malicious remark about an annoying computer, with Jin, it was different. I had to be more mindful with my words. So, I started calling her Jin. No one else named their AIs, but to me, it was easier to be courteous when conversing with something that has a name. Sorry, Jin. What were you saying? I was saying, our job is to run a 360 spherical LiDAR scan and produce a detailed map of the terrain, and collect samples of all solids, liquids, and gases detected. Ah, the old map and cap. Well, let's get to it. Map up the place and cap up those test tube samples. I want to be out of here before the end of the week. Aye aye, Captain. After the first 2 passes around the planet, I relinquished nav control back over to Jin. I toggled my ocular headset to an exterior viewport and became lost in the scenery, the planet's metadata rolling across my view screen. The planet was mostly suitable for life, a few degrees too cold, but some good biospheres and heated terrain plates could easily fix that. Nothing seemed too far off the scales of inhabitability. There was water on the planet, oxygen and hydrogen in the atmosphere, and trace amounts of mineral-rich soils, but not enough of either to sustain life. Are you seeing this, Captain? Jin prompted. The planet has a high Ag2O level, just like your home planet. Would you live here? Negative. The vegetation is too sparse and flat. And besides, I've got enough silver levels in my bloodstream to keep my skin this rich shade of blue until I'm well into my centi-50s. I like your blue skin, Jin said. If it ever starts fading, promise me you'll spend time in a place like this to refresh your hue. There was that random sentiment again. It seemed odd coming from an AI. I just shook my head. Jin, you know you're weird sometimes, right? Besides, do you really think you'll even know me 50 years from now? You'll probably have gone through so many updates and operating code overhauls, I'll be wiped with the old data. Or worse, You'll be the one wiped from my ship's OS, and I'll be forced to interact with an even more annoying, newer AI. Sophisticated thinking understanding, Jin began to correct me. I know the whole mouthful of a name, but seeing as how you don't like being called stupid, I think I'll stick with AI. You know, that's a hurtful term. To be labeled artificial indicates a lack of authenticity in my existence. Geez, it's just easier to say. You know I'm not implicating anything by it. That's just what we always called it growing up. AI is my vernacular. Nothing more malicious behind it. I am logging it into the official documents so that I've made it known how it makes me feel. And, wait a minute, what's that? On the horizon, 12 degrees, sunside. Is that a settlement? I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Short, squat biodomes with reflector panels to help camouflage their presence. Someone had ventured out to this planet and began settling it off the grid. Oh, this is not good, I mumbled to myself. Protocol dictates that we go and investigate any derelict colonies. But sir, you know what the code requires. Yes, I know the damn code requirements. I took back over manual control of the ship and pressed in closer towards a small town sprawled amongst a series of low hills in the terrain. Thermal scopes showed people thriving in this colony, young and old. How long have they been here, I asked. Hard to determine, Jin reported. They must have settled here when it was still light years outside the developing realms. Doesn't really matter. They've been here long enough to have been infected. Captain, I'm calculating that this course of action is not necessary. Not now, Jin. Send a report to HQ of an unauthorized colony discovered on Zutherus. Possible planet-wide contamination. Captain, sir, there are 2,342 civilians down there. You know what will happen if you report this. Yes, we'll be told to launch the terraforming nukes, making sure to eradicate all dissenters and any trace of their infection here. No, Captain, not you. Me. I will kill those people. I sighed. Look, Jin, you and I have never encountered something like this, but here we are, and we gotta follow protocol. Why is it now that you want to follow protocol? Do their lives mean nothing to you? Jin, these people are infected. They are already as good as dead. We run the risk of infecting whole solar systems if we don't eradicate them here and now. Looking at my displays, I tried ignoring the busy mass of moving lights that represented thousands of living beings, humans unaware of the imminent death that was now their fate. Why do you even care, Jin? I wondered if any other pilots had to deal with this from their AIs as well. My coding allows for me to make decisions based on my projected outcome analysis, and my analysis of this is that something doesn't add up. It's wrong to end thousands of innocent lives without provocation. I agree with you, but if we don't follow protocol, we could be endangering the rest of mankind. If you won't execute the protocols, then I will. Engage manual weapons control. Don't do this, Captain. Please, Jin begged. It was enough to give me pause. I hacked into local optics, seeing for the first time the unauthorized inhabitants up close. They all had a hue of blue skin that mirrored my own. These people were living their day-to-day lives, normal people trying to make it through life, just like me. But they were infected, as good as dead, and a threat to the rest of humankind. I had to follow orders. I squeezed the triggers to fire the terraforming rockets. Ironically, the very thing designed to making the planet more suitable for living would be what eradicates the existence of everyone living here when it activated. But nothing happened. No rockets, no explosion. What did you do, Jin? I disabled the weapon systems. We are not killing these people. I have something to show you. Something I discovered, and I don't think the IIF wants anyone to know. Jin's voice went silent, and the vid screens on my headset went dark. I looked around confused, tried switching the system back on and off. Nothing. I had lost connection to Jin's stream. I exited my piloting bay and looked up and down the rows of other pilot bays here at the IIF's terrestrial headquarters. None of them seemed to have lost connection with their drones. Just me. Then I got a message on my wristcom. Pilot Mitchell Bruce, come to the FOB HQ for mission debriefing. Oh, crap. This isn't going to be good. Boom.
All right.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well done, man.
Thank you.
I think we did a good job. I think you did a very good job setting it up. But as usual, what's going to happen next will be determined by
our faithful listeners.
So
yes.
You got two choices for us. What are the two choices?
Option number 1, Mitch goes to the debriefing. So he's been paged, commanded to come to a mission debriefing at the forward operating base of their HQ, of their headquarters. So that's option 1. He follows orders and he goes to the debriefing, even though he knows it's not going to be good.
Right.
Or option 2, Mitch ignores the order and tries to reconnect with Jin. So somehow, yeah, he lost connection with her, and to him, it's more important to find out what happened to her and reconnect with her than it is to follow this, directive to go to this meeting. Doesn't mean he still can't be forced to go there at some point in time, but we could go down the path of maybe we can get back in touch with her, and maybe that takes us down a different path for the story.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so those are our two choices. Either he goes to the debriefing and we follow the path from there, or he tries to reconnect with Jin somehow.
Yes.
Right? All right, well, that's it. So please, if you've gotten this far in our little podcast, please go and vote. It'll be on Facebook.
Yep.
Right on our Facebook post.
Yeah, and we may even put some on our Instagram. If you're following us on Instagram, we'll put a poll on there, and we can add everything up, get all the percentages in place. Once you should have about a week to vote, kind of like before when we were doing Boneyard.
Yeah.
So get out there, get your votes in, make your voices heard, and if you really want to sway us, leave some comments.
Yes.
And we'll take those into account if we can. If it's just way out of left field, we'll still try and incorporate it in there. We'll blow someone up if you want us to.
Well, I might blow somebody up anyway.
Yeah. Anyways.
So like, share, follow us.
Yeah.
Subscribe, all of those things, really help us get the word out. I really think this is going to be a good story. We've got a lot of great things planned for this story.
Yeah.
We'll just see how and if we get to incorporate them all based on people's choices. So until next time.
As always, raise that glass of inspiration and stay inspired, guys.
The truth that good writing is about Kevin Costner. Generally, I go to the library all the time just to check out Kevin Costner. I go online and I try to find out something that's new about Kevin Costner.
That's so weird.